First, let's start with this case.
So, I know the title might sound harsh, but that's genuinely what happened. To give some context, I, male, 22 years old, have been in a relationship with my boyfriend Mark, male, 27 years old, for 2 years. He has a daughter named Lily, female, 7 years old, and that's an important detail for this story. I first met Mark 5 years ago when I started babysitting his daughter while he worked. He was a single father because Lily's mother had passed away. Since Lily and I got along so well, I became the primary babysitter whenever he needed help. It worked out perfectly because we lived just 2 streets apart, and it was convenient for everyone since I liked spending time with them, and they felt comfortable with me. Eventually, Mark and I developed feelings for each other, and I soon moved in with him and Lily, becoming a second father figure to her. Now, here's where the issue begins. My sister, female, 35 years old, is married to her husband, male, 33 years old, and I see them at every family gathering. Her husband is generally a nice person, although we aren't close friends. He had never met Mark. When I started dating Mark, he initially didn't want to attend any family events because he's naturally shy and doesn't feel comfortable around large groups of people. I completely understood and never pressured him. However, last week it was my mom's birthday, and she specifically asked if Mark and Lily could come. After some hesitation, Mark agreed to join us. When my sister and her husband learned that Mark would be attending, they became upset, and I couldn't figure out why. Later, my sister pulled me aside and accused me of being inconsiderate and selfish toward her husband by inviting Mark. I was confused since I had no idea why this would bother them. It turned out that her husband had unresolved issues from his childhood because his parents divorced after his father had an affair with their babysitter. This experience left him emotionally scarred. I told my sister that while I sympathized with his past, it was unreasonable to project those issues onto my relationship with Mark, especially since there was no infidelity or breach of trust involved. My relationship with Mark was entirely different. Despite my explanation, she continued to accuse me of being inconsiderate before walking away in frustration. 2 days ago, we attended my mom's birthday party. Mark and Lily were warmly welcomed by most of my family. However, my sister and her husband spent the entire day glaring at us and whispering rude remarks. Things escalated after dinner when they directed their hostility toward Mark and Lily, saying things like, "Your dad and his boyfriend are strange people," and even making cruel comments about Lily's late mother, accusing Mark of being indifferent to her memory. Naturally, both Mark and I were furious. Knowing how upset Mark was, I asked him to take Lily to the car while I confronted my sister. I expressed how unacceptable their behavior was, and we decided to leave soon afterward, but not before apologizing to my mom for the scene it had caused. Since then, the family group chat has been divided. Most relatives are supportive of us, but a few extended family members have taken my sister and her husband's side, arguing that we should have ignored their remarks or left without causing a confrontation. While I understand that my mom genuinely wanted Mark and Lily to attend, I can't help but feel guilty for the drama that unfolded during her birthday celebration. So, am I wrong for standing up for my family in that situation? Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. Let me get this straight. Your sister and brother-in-law wanted you to exclude your partner and his daughter from a family event because of his unrelated childhood trauma? That's wild. You didn't invite a babysitter. You invited your boyfriend and your daughter. Yes, Lily is your daughter too. They're part of your family now, and you don't need to apologize for that. What really seals it is the disgusting things they said directly to your boyfriend and Lily. That's not uncomfortable. That's straight up hateful. If anyone should be apologizing to your mom for ruining the party, it's your sister and brother-in-law for bringing their baggage and bigotry to the table. You did the right thing standing up for your family, because that's what Mark and Lily are. Family isn't just blood, it's the people you love and protect, and you did exactly that. You're not in the wrong. You ignored them till they decided to involve Lily. That was intentional, and only served to do as much damage as possible, and to cause a rift by forcing their misconceptions and skewed morality on a 7-year-old. Put them on blast for that. Instead of talking it out with you as normal adults would, they chose to go for the weakest link and went after a child. You didn't cause the drama. Your brother-in-law and sister did. The blame lies squarely with them. If they try to deflect it to you, redirect it back at them where it belongs. You have done nothing wrong at all. Don't let them hoodwink you into taking responsibility for their bad behavior. You're not in the wrong. You brother-in-law is so full of nonsense and so self-centered that I'm lost for words. His past has nothing to do with you. And if your truly amazing How I Met Your Father story is bothering him because he is mentally disturbed, egoistic freak, then it is not your problem or your family problem. The fact that you sister aligned with his delusions is not helping here, and they can both get the hell out. How dare they even say that your BF cheated on his dead wife? What a cruel, inaccurate, and idiotic thing to say. Next up, my boyfriend, who is 26 years old, and I, also 26, have been in a relationship for about 8 months. We live together, but we manage our finances separately. I worked hard and earned a college degree, which has allowed me to secure a well-paying job. When I first met my boyfriend, he didn't have a stable job, but he was determined to improve his situation. Thanks to his efforts, he now has a job with a respectable income. He earns less than I do, so we split our shared expenses proportionately, based on our incomes. At the beginning of our move-in, I covered the entire first month's rent by myself, and I also paid for our vacations up front. He still owes me money for both, but I'm not in a hurry for repayment since I'm financially stable. One of our favorite pastimes is gaming. He plays on his PlayStation 4, and I use my Nintendo Switch. Recently, he expressed interest in getting a PlayStation 5 together, suggesting that we could sell the Switch because it's been lagging a lot. We hadn't discussed who would primarily use the new console, but the idea was that we would split the cost equally. I agreed with him that having a PlayStation 5 would be great, especially since my Switch has been giving me issues. However, since he didn't have enough savings at the time and still owed me money for our vacation, we put the idea on hold. Lately, the lag on my Switch has become increasingly frustrating. The console struggles with performance, and it doesn't have enough storage capacity for my games. Given that I have sufficient savings, I decided to go ahead and purchase a PlayStation 5 on my own. I texted my boyfriend to let him know I planned to buy it later that day, and I followed through with the purchase. Afterward, my boyfriend became upset. He had been hoping we would buy the console together when he had saved enough. Since it would have taken him several more months to gather the necessary funds, I decided to buy it alone rather than wait. He also asked me if the PlayStation 5 would belong to both of us or just me. I explained that the console would remain mine unless he paid for half of it, but he was welcome to use it when I wasn't home. He felt hurt by this response and told me he was disappointed, accusing me of being unfair. Now, I'm left wondering if I'm in the wrong for buying the PlayStation 5 without him and for stating that it's mine until he contributes half of the cost. Am I being unreasonable in this situation? Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. You've said he can use it and have ownership when he can afford it. I don't see what the problem is. He should be thankful your salary and hard work has allowed both of you to enjoy the PS5 sooner than if you waited for him to save. I think he's just insecure about money, and probably feels like you just buying a PS5 whilst he's still catching up on his debt to you is making him feel inferior. That's a him problem, not a you problem. You're an adult with adult money that you worked hard for and can spend it as you please. Maybe you should tell him he can't play on the PS5 until he can afford it, since he seems so keen to bite the hand that feeds him. You're not in the wrong. I am struggling to see his perspective here. I understand that you discussed buying the PS5 together at some point, but he can't afford it. You bought it anyway, and you're still offering to let him use it when you're not. What more does he want? To me, it sounds like he's jealous because he wants to play the PS5 and possibly stick you with the PS4. I just can't understand why else this would matter so much to him. 8 months isn't very long. If you didn't live together yet but were thinking about it, I'd encourage you to wait longer. He's already relying on you financially. To me, there are some pink flags here. Be careful. You're not in the wrong. He wanted you to pay half to get the hand-me-down PS4. This isn't really a shared asset. Don't take his money if he offers it later, or he will demand the PS5 in the breakup. Next up, I, male, 35 years old, have been in a relationship with my girlfriend, Sarah, female, 35 years old, for 4 years. Sarah has a son, Nathan, male, 9 years old, from her previous relationship with Mark, male, 36 years old. Sarah has full custody of Nathan, while Mark has scheduled visitations 1 weekend per month. About a year and a half ago, Sarah and Nathan moved in with me. From my perspective, it was a bit challenging in the beginning. I've always been protective of my personal space, so adjusting to having 2 additional people in my home wasn't easy. When Sarah moved in, we agreed that Mark's visitations would take place at our apartment, but only while I was home. My main concern was that I didn't know Mark well enough, and I wasn't comfortable with him being in my apartment unsupervised. When we suggested this arrangement to Mark, he agreed without issue. Now, on to the main problem. 3 weeks ago marked 4 months since Mark's last visit, so I asked Sarah when he was planning to visit Nathan next. She shrugged and said she would check with him. However, she never followed up on it. A few days ago, I asked her again, and she told me she'd let me know once she had the information. Unexpectedly, Nathan, who was in the living room, overheard us and shouted something along the lines of, "Dad was here last weekend, remember?" Sarah's expression immediately changed, and I asked her what Nathan meant. At first, she avoided giving me a direct answer, but eventually, she admitted that Mark had visited during the past 2 scheduled weekends while I was at work. When I confronted her about breaking our agreement, she defended herself, saying that this was her home too, and that she had the right to invite anyone she wanted as long as she was present and supervising the visit. I told her that wasn't the point. The issue was that she violated my trust by going against the agreement we had in place. This escalated into a heated argument, which ended with me telling her to leave the apartment. She packed her things and left with Nathan. The last I heard, she and Nathan were staying at her parents' house. Since then, I've been receiving several messages from Sarah and her parents, accusing me of being unreasonable and cruel for kicking them out over what they consider a minor issue. Sarah has also taken to social media, posting about how horrible I am for making her and Nathan leave. All of this has made me question my actions, and I'm wondering if I went too far. For additional context, the court order for Mark's visitation was issued because he has a criminal record. Sarah never specified what the record was for, and I didn't push her to explain further, but it was enough to make me uncomfortable with him being around without my supervision. So am I the one at fault here? Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. Not only did she broke the only rule you had, for whatever reason, but she lied about it multiple times and seems never had intention to tell you until the kid revealed the truth. If she had an issue with the single boundary you've set, she should have talked to you and renegotiate it. But she didn't bother, and I'm sorry, but letting someone move in with you doesn't automatically makes you and them 100% equal residents in a house you own, especially when it comes to conditions that were agreed on before the move. You're not in the wrong. She lied to you multiple times. And when she got caught, her response was to try to emotionally manipulate you into accepting this blatant violation of your boundaries. Even if this was entirely above board, though she wouldn't have had to lie if it was, and she didn't do anything with her ex, there's clearly no respect for you here. Everyone sucks. She shouldn't have lied, and that's weird. But dude, you kicked them out like they were guests. You just said they've been living there for a year and a half. You kicked a child out of his home instantly on a whim, for something he had nothing to do with. What the hell? I hope at least you consider this a breakup and are done with them both in your life. Because if you have any notion of treating this as a standard couples dispute that needs resolving after that. Next up, I made a handmade blanket for my sister-in-law, Amanda, and was able to give it to her last weekend. She had requested specific colors for the blanket, and since I didn't have any other projects on my to-do list, I was happy to make it for her. Fortunately, I already had most of the required colors, so it worked out well. When I gave her the blanket, she seemed excited at first and started looking it over. I assumed she was just curious about how it was made, since she doesn't crochet. After examining it for a bit, she said she loved the blanket, but couldn't help noticing some small mistakes I'd made. Curious, I asked her what she meant, and she pointed out details like how I had done a single row of striping instead of 3 in one section, or how I had accidentally switched to the wrong color at some point, which she claimed disrupted a pattern. She then handed the blanket back to me and said she appreciated my progress, but couldn't wait to see the finished product. I told her that the blanket was, in fact, already finished. She looked surprised and said it couldn't be considered complete because it wasn't perfect, and suggested that I go back and correct the small errors she pointed out. I was honestly taken aback. I really dislike when perfectionists try to impose their own standards on others. I made this blanket out of love, using my free time, and didn't charge her anything. I explained that to her, and she acknowledged it, saying she appreciated my effort and loved me for it, but also claimed she wouldn't be able to use the blanket because she'd only noticed the errors. At that point, I said, fine, and took the blanket back, telling her that if she didn't want it as it was, I'd rather keep it. She looked surprised and said she did want it, but only if it was my best work, and not something she considered rushed or incomplete. I was stunned. If she thought crocheting an entire blanket with a few minor errors counted as half-hearted, then I'd prefer to keep the blanket for myself. She got upset and accused me of being unreasonable, saying that fixing the mistakes wouldn't take much time. If you know anything about crocheting, you'll understand that correcting an error made on row 36 of a 1,115-row blanket means undoing the entire project up to that point, essentially starting over. I wasn't willing to do that. Now, Amanda is upset with me, and she and a few family members think I overreacted. She insists that it wouldn't have taken long to make the corrections. So, here I am, asking for outside opinions. Am I in the wrong here? Let's start judging. You aren't being ridiculous. She definitely was. Super Cruffin, you're not in the wrong. What she might be missing is that there is no fixing an error like you described in crochet. You either start over or pull out the stitches back to the point of error to resume from there. She couldn't be a gracious recipient of a heartfelt, thoughtful, homemade gift, and that shows you something about her. If she requires perfection, that's pretty incompatible with homemade, not to mention super dismissive and presumptuous of her not to prioritize the hard work and hours that went into making it. Given that she's a member of your family and you probably don't want a long-term rift, I would hold my ground but try to diffuse it. Just explain, repeatedly if necessary, that it's too bad your gift didn't work out, but no hard feelings. Do not feel forced to start again or to fix the blanket in any way. Try not to create drama or judgment over her for it. Believe me, her response to this whole thing stands alone. And don't offer to make her anything in the future. That's for sure. You're not in the wrong. You're not in the wrong. You're not in the wrong. I knit. I know an error I made in row 12 isn't fixable unless I undo everything above row 12 and reknit it. Obviously impossible if the work has already been cast off. Your next gift to miss it has to be perfect. Should be a how to crochet book, a couple of different sized hooks, and a nice selection of yarn. Or maybe you could get an actual kit. Give it to her with great excitement and gush how much you're looking forward to spending time crocheting with her, and how thrilled you'll be when she can match you stitch for stitch. Inform her how satisfying it will be for her to crochet her own perfect blanket to her own standards. Lucky Amanda. You're not in the wrong, and I really admire anyone who can crochet. You're not in the wrong. I crochet my philosophy as I make what I love for who I love, and I don't take requests, lol. My tags actually say made with love and mistakes. The beauty of something homemade is that it is one of a kind, not made by a machine. So what she sees as mistakes to me make it unique and wonderful. Keep it or gift it to someone who will appreciate it, but never make her something again.